Hi, welcome to our session on creating presentations. I'm Heather Lorenz. If you haven't met me yet, I'm the digital media trainer at the journalism school. So what does that mean? It means I'm the person you find when you need help with anything related to videos, animation, graphic design, all things technology, all things Adobe. I'm here to help you improve those skills. So the skill I want to help you build today is how you can use basic design and some cool tools to make your presentations great. Let's dive in. So we're going to look at a couple of basic topics. First, we're going to look at the elements of design and think of the design elements as ingredients that help us bake a design cake. Okay, so it's everything we go in and build with. Shapes, lines, all of those elements. Design principles are how we put all of those together. So how we make the batter and bake it. Finally, we're going to look at some presentation tools. So different things that you can use to make each presentation better. With both of these, always a wise idea to do a little less than you think you need to. There's always a concern of doing a little too much with design, using a few too many tools. Remember, you want to keep it simple. Finally, I'm going to share with you how you can get a hold of me, work with me, and if you have any further questions, how we can address those. Let's dive in. So first design element I want us to discuss is lines. You have a couple of basic types, your vertical or horizontal lines and your diagonal lines. So if we look at these examples, we can see that the lines here, and lines aren't necessarily actual stroke lines, but they can also be how spacing is used. So these lines are really created with white space and how the text is flowing. It creates energy, it creates movement, it gives us some space to kind of move around that design. Has a lot of energy. Whereas vertical and horizontal lines are very stable. They might be a little more traditional. They can be used to help direct the eye. So as these lines move down, so do we. Shapes. Have two basic types of shapes, organic and geometric. And organic can be anything that doesn't really fit into that geometric shape. So in this case, we have that Arctic shape and kind of plane off the edges of those glaciers and that look. Compare that to the geometric shapes. So we've got strong circles, even these lines, there's your lines again, are creating some geometric shapes. I see triangles, I see parallelograms. And so how can shapes be used? Well, in this case, this shape is helping to illustrate content. This shape is creating texture, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But it's also giving us this nice space where that headline is really highlighted. On the geometric side, we're using those circles as really a way to flow through content, to direct the viewer's attention. Texture, and I just referenced texture before, but I want to dive more into texture. So there's two real ways that we can use texture. The first way, and I want to show you how with this example, the texture is actually created by geometric shapes and lines, and it kind of fades into a background texture. And that's a real trend way of working with content, so that geometric shapes, patterns kind of fade into the background and just provide a little background texture. These examples, in this case, the texture is the actual orange. Now, this isn't a photo of an orange, this is a graphic, but the way the edges of the peel have created text columns for us creates that texture. Here, this is about poetry, and so we have this ink texture and ink blots that we've used to create texture. Texture is a great thing to add into your design because it can often warm things up. Colors. So colors always have meaning attached to them, and I've included a document to help you kind of look at different texture documents, different colors to see how those are used. And so all of those elements can imply different things to your artwork. So definitely worth referring to these. One thing to remember is that different colors can have different meanings in different cultures. So if you're in a situation where you need to be aware of some diversity, make sure that you've inquired about that and you've looked into those issues. But color can be used as a monotone, as we see on the right, or in the middle, we have a variety of color, but I want you to look at how these are all in the same tonal family. So if we would have thrown, say, a bright blue in there, that would not have worked. Two ways to really start building your own colors and accessing them. The first one is through Adobe. And in addition to this website, there's also a great app called Capture that you can download to your mobile device. So iPhone, Android, iPad, and you can access this kind of look on that as well. So if you're mobile and want to capture color, you can. And I won't go into the different elements here, but just a quick overview. We have our color wheel, so I can set whatever my main color is. And then I can decide what color harmony I want to use with that. And it's worth exploring how different color harmonies can help you. So usually complementary colors are a little more active, whereas your monochromatic might be a little more stable. Same with analogous. I can also explore different themes here. So if I know I'm going to be creating, say, a spring themed design, I can search and find other color palettes that people have put together, link that to my libraries and use that. Next one is coolers, works very similar. So you can make palettes, you can explore different colors, you can just generate new colors. Next, typography. And so typography, I think, is one of the things that beginning designers usually stumble over the most. So first, let's start with some basic font terms. You have three main categories of fonts. First, serifs, and you can see our serifs have those little feet at the end of them. This would be your Times New Roman, would be a serif. Next is sans serif, and you can see that has no feet. And finally, script fonts. And so script fonts are always connected and have that cursive look to them. Next terminology are how you kind of work with those fonts together. The first is tracking. And so tracking creates space between words. So you can see here's a lot of tracking right in this one, and here is very little tracking. Next is letting. So you can have single space letting or double space letting. So that's the space between the lines. So a couple of resources that I recommend as you're starting to familiarize yourself with fonts is Canva font pairing. And they don't have every font in here, but it's a good way to start looking at fonts and comparing them. So let's say my first one is Railway. And I know I'm going to use that. That's one of the KU fonts. And it's going to not only recommend fonts, but it's going to give me examples of how those look together. So this is Railway and Merriweather. And so this is Droid Serif. So there's my Railway, here's my Droid Serif. So I can see how those match together. So as you're getting started, this is a good one to kind of look at how fonts work together. One of the other things to just keep in mind is the reason why these fonts get together, and this is a little bit in the weeds, but if you see how the Y, if I drew a line down the middle of this Y, I would draw that same line down the middle of this Y. If they're angled differently, they don't get along. That is why it's often hard to match script fonts. If you're looking for fonts, Adobe has a font site, and if you are a Creative Cloud member, you can search for fonts, browse them, and then activate them so that it works across your devices. You can see they've really got things broken out. So if I know I'm going to be looking for a, let's say, a stencil font, it'll give me all the stencil fonts, and then I can go into that stencil font and activate them and see what they look like. So I think that Adobe Fonts is a great place to get started because it's already linked in to all of your Adobe software. Next one is DaFont. And from DaFont, you would have to download and then install your fonts. Another thing, there are some little hidden ornery things in some of the fonts, shall we say. So if you're using them and you're PDFing, make sure to double check your PDF before you send it out. But you can see they have a real good variety and different searches that you can get into. So just to recap, we've looked at lines, shape, texture, color, and typography. Now we're ready to think about how we would use all those elements together. And those are our design principles. So we're going to start out with hierarchy. Hierarchy is what you can use to establish importance. So any of those elements we can utilize to help establish importance. So in this case, we've used typography as a dominant element. And you can see the texture that is used is not as large. It is not as important as this. Probably secondary in importance is the lines and the shapes, geometric, that we've created with those. Over here, you can see that we have some overlapping. And so overlapping is another technique besides size that helps us establish importance and organize content. We also see size and font styling as a way to help us navigate our content. So what does this mean for you? When you're building your design slides or slide decks, you want to think about, well, how am I going to use my lines and my shapes and the size of my type to establish hierarchy and to let the viewer know what content is most important? Legibility, such an important design principle. So when you think of type, you need to not only consider your font choice, but you also need to consider color and how that impacts readability. Because it might be a great font, you might love it, but if people can't read it, it's not functional. It's not a good choice. So at first blush, let's just compare this sans serif Helvetica to the script. And right off the bat, you can see how much easier it is to read the Helvetica than the script. Additionally, you can read the Helvetica in that very small size. That is not true for the script. So as you choose your fonts, always consider readability. You might love how this script looks, but it's not very functional. Then consider color. We take away the readability of that Helvetica when we change the color. And I won't get into all of the issues with accessibility, but it's well worth browsing and reading about color choice and accessibility. And we've just completely made this unreadable and not accessible for people. Repetition. So how can we repeat our colors, our shapes, our fonts to create visual interest? So in the example on the right, we've repeated shape and lines. And in the example on the left, we've repeated the same font and colors. Notice how that's also creating some hierarchy. Final, and I would argue one of the most important design principles is knowing your audience. So knowing who your audience is should inform your color, your font, your overall design choices. So if we look at these two different examples of PowerPoints, think about what audience do you think is attending the presentation on the left versus the right? The right, I mean, and without seeing the word corporate on it, looks corporate. The angles, the colors, the shapes, it feels pretty corporate. Now, the angle gives us a little modern twist. So it's corporate, but we're not buttoned up corporate. Whereas the one on the left, we've got those dots in the background creating texture. I've got these funky on-trend graphics. So that might be for a younger audience, a startup audience, maybe not buttoned up at all. It's casual Fridays every day at that presentation. So think about how your overall design and knowing your audience relates to each other. Let's get into some tools. So we've got some ideas about what we're using to design, and we've got some ideas about how we're going to put those together so that they look great. How do we do that? So the first thing I'm going to say is I have nothing against PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides, but I do encourage you to design your own templates. I've included a link here, and you'll get access to this presentation where it walks you through exactly how you can design your own presentation, create your own template. So I would encourage you to do that. Plan out based on your audience. The people who made PowerPoint templates or Google Slide templates, they don't know your audience. That's where you need to start thinking about the elements and principles. My next tool is Spark. So Spark has 3 different parts in it. And again, I won't get into doing a full training here, but if you would like a full training on Spark, I do have one on jschooltech.org, and you can go in there and learn all about Spark. So Spark allows you to create 3 basic things: videos or slideshows, web pages or presentations, and then social media posts. And I'll quickly go into one of the presentations I was playing with. And so this creates a web page so I can add images, text. I have a theme that I can change over here. And it's just a matter of hitting these plus marks and adding things in. So well worth playing around. It does create like a parallax style of content. So when you go to present, you can arrow through this content and create kind of a new and interesting look. So this is a presentation where I start by critiquing that graphic. And if you've been paying attention, it needs some help. Next is InDesign Publish Online. And I've linked to a little how-to video on how to publish your InDesign documents online. And actually what this presentation is InDesign Publish Online. So this slide was designed in InDesign, and then I made it interactive and uploaded it. So InDesign Online, a great option. Next are some tools from Night Lab. And each of these are different ways you can tell some really interesting stories. So let's just take a quick look at some of the examples. So the first one is timeline. So if the presentation you're going to give is kind of linked in time, this is a great way to show this. So we'll go into this one. And you actually use your Google Drive. It's not coming up. That's okay. You can link and go through this. I'm not sure why it's not coming up. But the idea is you can create, we can look at this example, timelines, and then embed videos, photos, hyperlinks, maps, include all of these elements that can be navigated. Then you can embed that, or you can just present from here. And again, it uses a spreadsheet on your Google Drive to make that happen. They've got a full help tutorial to help you through building that. So a great one there. Juxtapose. So if you're illustrating something that you might be using some photographs, this is kind of a cool thing to do. And then story map. Story map is similar to timeline in how it's structured. So you can see how it looks very similar, but everything is based on maps. And then you can embed all kinds of different content. So photos, here's some tweets. When Thomas Jefferson was tweeting, and videos and all sorts of things you can embed inside Story Map. So it's a great way, again, if place has something to do with part of your story, this is a great way to present that story in a different way and give people a little context of where and what. Let's look at some ways you can add visuals, because your presentation should have visual elements. You want to create a visual more than a text document. You certainly don't want people to just sit there and read your slide as you read it to them. There's nothing worse. So here's a couple of my favorites. So Infogram lets you create some interesting charts and maps and graphics. And then you can download those and embed those into your presentation. You know, illustrating data correctly is so important in presentations, and making sure it looks good and is readable and accessible to people. An infogram can help you do that. And oftentimes, you know, if you're not familiar with things like Illustrator, Infogram is a great solution to that. And they also have a feature where you can create some maps. It is one of those sites where you have some things for free and then premium things. The next one is Coggle, and Coggle lets you create mind maps. And so I think this is an interesting option for you if you wanted to explain how something works, or if you want to show someone a process. This can be kind of an interesting way to present some information. So if you have that type of flow or something you want to show, Coggle can be a great option. You are probably familiar with Unsplash and Pixabay and related. You are wise enough to know that we just don't go onto the Google and steal images. And Unsplash and Pixabay allow you to download really high quality graphics. Still cite who created them, but most of them have some Creative Commons licensing. But sometimes you don't want images, you want icons. So you may not be familiar with the Noun project. Here you can find, much like Unsplash and Pixabay, royalty-free icons. There are some that price, but it's one of those, some are free, some are to buy. And again, if you have some skills in Illustrator, this is a great time to really highlight those and start building your own collection of icons to use over time. Next presentation tools are from Google. So, you know, we talked about the Night Lab story map. Another way to tell place story is to use Google Earth. So if you're talking about a place, take your audience there. You know, launch Earth, go to where you're going, let them view. It's a great way to look at things. Next one is trends. And if you haven't played with trends, for one, I could get lost in trends. I just find it absolutely so fascinating. But even just knowing what the trends are can be interesting, and seeing the maps. So you might be finding not only content you can use, but what people are talking about, and link that into your presentation. So you can really use Google Trends a couple of different ways. And your final presentation tool is using some screen recording. So I think a great example of this, I often see students who are presenting things on Twitter, but they've just screenshotted a whole bunch of tweets. Showing me scrolling through that feed is 100 times more interesting. And you can use either QuickTime on the Mac, or on the PC, there's a TextSmith Capture. You can actually use Capture on the Mac as well. And I've linked those so you can go in. Great screen recording. Another thing that this is great for is if you want to demonstrate something that might be on your iPad or your phone, you can hook that in and use those for screen capturing those. So if you've ever seen someone who's showing you something on a mobile device and you're like, how did they do that? You just hook it into your computer, grab your QuickTime, and record that. So that should give you an idea of some good tools you can use. And then those basic design elements, I encourage you to go back and just think about how you're using those when you design your presentation. So how you can get a hold of me. My email is right there, so you are welcome to email me. I have Calendly appointments that you can make if you want me to look at your presentations and talk about design ideas. I would also encourage you to visit our website, jschooltech.org. That has all kinds of tutorials. So if you're like, man, I like the idea of using this Illustrator thing to create icons, we've got a video for that. There's those videos on Spark. So if you wanted to get into using one of those, you can use one of those. And just reach out to us if you have any questions. We have all kinds of workshops that run. So we are happy to see you in our events and help you improve your technology. So hopefully you are motivated and excited and ready to design beautiful presentations. Thank you so much.